when a bunch of fake HOA officers showed up at my doorstep, claiming I was breaking neighborhood rules. I knew right away something fishy was going on. They had phony badges and a ridiculous amount of arrogance, trying to arrest me right there in my own backyard. What they didn't know: I'm the actual town marshal, and these clowns were about to learn the hard way that they'd messed with the wrong guy. Now, I've always known the HOA around here was full of people with too much time on their hands and not enough sense. A group of wannabe sheriffs acting like they're the judge, jury, and executioner of anyone who doesn't fall in line with their ridiculous rules. Over the years, they'd bug me about all kinds of nonsense: the size of my fence, the color of my door, even the way I park my truck. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what went down that morning. I was sitting there, enjoying my coffee in peace, when I caught a reflection in the window. For people were lined up on my sidewalk, all dressed in matching polo shirts and sunglasses, trying to give off some kind of false authority. It was like they'd picked up their whole act from a clearance sale of bad ideas. One of them had a notepad, another was wearing a toy radio like it meant something. But the real kicker was the woman in the middle. She had short, obviously dyed hair, her arms crossed, and a look on her face like she'd just swallowed a gallon of vinegar. Karen. She was clearly the ringleader, standing there like she was commanding an army of idiots. I sighed, drained the last of my coffee, and went to answer the door. Before I could even get it fully open, Karen launched into her speech like she was holding a press conference. "You're in serious violation of HOA regulations, and we're here to take action." I stared at her, half expecting hidden cameras to pop out. Was this some kind of prank? What on earth did she want now? Before I could say a word, she shoved a piece of plastic in my face. "You are under investigation for multiple infractions, including unauthorized painting of your garage, the presence of an unregistered vehicle, and..." She paused, like she was about to accuse me of something major. "Inappropriate behavior toward members of the community." I almost laughed. My garage had been the same color since the day I moved in. The unregistered vehicle was my perfectly legal truck parked on my property, and the inappropriate behavior, that was just me refusing to waste my time at their mind-numbing HOA meetings. But here's where it got wild. Because you've ignored previous warnings, the HOA is exercising its right to detain you. We're taking you into custody until this matter is resolved. Detain me? I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "You want to arrest me?" Karen puffed up her chest, like she was about to be honored for bravery. "The HOA has full authority over this community." Her little posse nodded in perfect unison, like they were a well-trained parrot choir. And that's when it hit me. These people actually thought they had the power to arrest me. They really believed it. What they didn't know: I'm the actual town marshal, not a wannabe security guard, not some neighborhood watch volunteer. A real law enforcement officer with a badge, a gun, and a lot of patience for dealing with nonsense like this. So, I decided to play along for a minute. "Interesting," I said, pretending to think it over. "And how exactly are you planning to arrest me?" Karen pointed to the guy next to her, a man with a beer belly squeezed into a shirt 2 sizes too small. He pulled out a pair of plastic handcuffs from his pocket. "Plastic. We have our methods," he said, trying to sound tough. It was official. The circus had come to town, and it was happening on my front porch. I took a slow, deep breath, stepped back, and pulled my wallet from my pocket, flipping it open to reveal my shiny badge. Karen's smug smile disappeared faster than a sale on Black Friday. "Good to know you think you can make arrests," I said, my voice low and serious. "Because right now you're committing a few crimes yourself, impersonating a law enforcement officer and attempted kidnapping, for starters." The silence was deafening. Karen's eyes widened, and her backup squad exchanged nervous glances. Suddenly, they realized who they were dealing with. What are you implying?" Karen stammered, her confidence crumbling like a house of cards in a storm. I crossed my arms and stood firm. "I'm implying that if you're not off my property in the next 5 seconds, I'll be making a real arrest." Silence again. Sweat started to drip down one of the guys' foreheads. Karen's hand shook as she clung to that stupid laminated piece of paper. And then, like rats fleeing a sinking ship, they started to back away, muttering lame excuses under their breath. "It's not over yet," Karen shouted before spinning around and marching off, her clueless gang trailing behind her. I stood there watching them go, feeling a mix of amusement and disbelief. What the hell just happened? But deep down, I knew this was far from over. If I thought that was the end of their ridiculous game, I was sorely mistaken. I've dealt with stubborn people before, but Karen and her crew took it to a whole new level. Normal folks would have backed down and moved on, but not her. Nope. Instead of giving up, she doubled down. The first sign of her retaliation came the very next day. I went outside to take out the trash, only to find my garbage cans were gone. Just gone. There was no trace of them on the sidewalk or anywhere near the house. I looked around, and sure enough, there was Karen, standing across the street with her arms crossed, watching like she was the queen of the neighborhood. Our eyes met, and she flashed me a smug little grin before heading back inside. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, but things got even worse when I reached my mailbox. Inside was an envelope stamped with the HOA's logo. I opened it, knowing it'd be more nonsense, and I wasn't wrong. It was a list of penalties. Apparently, I was now barred from using the trash service, couldn't park my car in the garage anymore, and was required to attend a mandatory meeting to discuss my inappropriate behavior. I ripped the letter in half right then and there, letting the pieces fall to the ground. Karen always had a way of getting under my skin, but if she was trying to irritate me this time, she'd have to step up her game. Of course, she had no shortage of tricks. That afternoon, I went out to handle a few things, and when I returned, I found an orange traffic cone smack dab in the middle of my driveway. Beside it, a plastic notice was nailed to a wooden stake, as if it were some kind of official warning. The sign claimed that my garage was closed by order of the HOA. It was honestly the most ridiculous thing I'd ever come across. Who in their right mind would think they could shut down someone's garage? I marched over, ripped the paper off, and tossed the cone onto the sidewalk without a second thought. That's when I noticed two of Karen's lackeys watching from across the street. One of them was scribbling something in a notebook, maybe owner improperly removes cone, like they were on a serious investigation, not playing inspector for a neighborhood power trip. No sooner had I tossed the cone than Karen herself appeared, right on cue. "You can't just take that down," she yelled, practically foaming at the mouth. I stood there, holding the cone as if it were some kind of evidence in a crime scene. "Oh, I can't?" In front of my own house. She jabbed her finger at the laminated paper, her face flushing with fury. "This is an official HOA sanction. You can't just ignore the rules." I exhaled slowly, resisting the urge to laugh outright. "Karen, you have no authority to shut down my garage. Hell, you don't have the power to do anything except try to drive me crazy." Her eyes widened in disbelief, and just as she opened her mouth to argue, I turned on my heel, walked inside, and slammed the door behind me. But I had a feeling this saga was far from over. Sure enough, the next day, while I was at the police station, my phone rang. It was one of the few neighbors not completely sucked into the HOA's madness. He sounded a little panicked. "Hey, man, the police are outside your place," he said, his voice tight. I paused, feeling a knot form in my gut. 2 cars. They said they got a call about a man with a gun on your property. That's when everything clicked. Karen had gone ahead and escalated things by calling in the cops, likely with some bogus story to get me in trouble. I wasted no time, jumped in my car, and headed straight home. When I got there, I saw Karen chatting with 2 police officers, playing the concerned citizen role to perfection. If I didn't know she was such a snake, I might have actually bought into it. I stepped out of the car, and the officers recognized me immediately. They were good guys, honest, and I could see in their expressions that they knew this was a whole lot of nothing. "Hey, boss," one of them said, a bit awkwardly. "We received a report of suspicious activity, something about a man with a gun at this address." I glanced over at Karen and couldn't help but call her out. "I'm guessing that tip came from this lady right here?" Karen feigned shock, placing a hand over her heart. "I only reported what I heard. Some people saw something suspicious and were worried." The officers exchanged tired looks. One of them sighed, turning back to me. "Look, there's no real issue here. so we'll just file this under a prank call. But Miss Karen, he added, his tone firm, making false reports like this can lead to serious consequences. For the first time, I saw real fear flash across Karen's face. Her skin flushed red, and though she looked like she wanted to argue, she stayed silent, just crossing her arms angrily. The cops left, and Karen and I stood there, staring at each other in silence. In that moment, I could see she finally realized she was walking a thin line, but I also knew she wasn't done yet. Karen wasn't the type to back down. I had a feeling she was already plotting her next move. Most folks with a bit of dignity would have thrown in the towel after the whole police stunt backfired. Not Karen. Losing wasn't in her playbook. If her pathetic attempt to get me arrested had failed, then she was undoubtedly cooking up something else. And sure enough, her next move showed up the very next morning. I woke up to the sound of a heavy truck rumbling to a stop right in front of my house. Still groggy, I pulled myself out of bed and looked out the window. A group of workers were hopping out of the vehicle, dressed in uniforms and carrying all sorts of equipment: excavators, shovels, and, of course, more orange cones. At first, I figured they'd gotten the wrong address. But then I saw Karen across the street, arms crossed, wearing a smug little grin, like she'd just set off a chain reaction that would bring my world crumbling down. I hurried downstairs, still in my pajamas, and went outside to confront the crew. One of the guys, probably the foreman, turned to me with a clipboard in hand. "Morning, sir. We're here to start work on repairing the underground pipes." I blinked, not quite understanding. "What repairs?" "We got a request from the HOA saying there's a water leak on your property." I glanced over at Karen, who was now pretending to admire a nearby tree. "Let me guess. This order was signed by a certain Karen Thompson." The guy flipped through his paperwork, nodding. "Yeah, Karen Thompson, president of the HOA." I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to tell them all to get lost. "Look, there's no leak here, and neither you nor the HOA has the right to dig up my yard. So, pack it up and head out." The foreman hesitated, looking around at his crew like he wasn't sure what to do. "Well, sir, we've already started. And now you're leaving." I cut him off, flashing my badge. His eyes widened, and I watched as he swallowed nervously. "All right, guys, pack it up. We're done here." As the workers began gathering their tools, Karen came storming over, practically foaming at the mouth. "You can't just send them away." I raised an eyebrow. "Send them away? You mean stop them from tearing up my yard for no reason?" She crossed her arms, clearly furious. "The HOA has the authority to manage the neighborhood's infrastructure. And I have the authority to arrest you for trespassing and fraud," I replied coolly. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but she couldn't seem to find the words. For once, she was speechless. But she recovered quickly enough. "You're disrespecting the community," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "A safety protocol, huh? That's funny, because the inspectors told me everything in my house was up to code. So either you were lying, or you've got no clue how to inspect anything." Karen clenched her jaw, shooting a glance at the inspectors, as if hoping they'd come to her defense. But they just shrugged, clearly done with all the drama. She tried to argue some more, but by that point, I was already dialing the inspection department to file an official complaint against her. When she realized things could get serious, Karen finally backed off. "This isn't over," she muttered, stomping away. But for her, it was. In the days that followed, Karen's situation only went downhill. The complaint I'd filed against the HOA got taken seriously, mainly because they'd already received several complaints about their bullying tactics. Soon, the investigation began, and as they dug deeper, more skeletons came tumbling out of the closet. Turns out, Karen had been fining residents for no good reason, just to rake in money for the association's so-called important events, which were really just parties for her and her little circle of friends. Not only that, but she'd hired shady contractors to do maintenance around the neighborhood and pocketed a chunk of the funds. But here's the kicker. She wasn't even supposed to be the president of the HOA. According to the rules, there was supposed to be an election every year, but Karen never bothered organizing it. She stayed in power simply because no one had the energy to challenge her. At least, not until now. A special meeting was called to figure out what to do about the HOA, and Karen showed up, trying her best to defend herself. But it was too late. Most of the residents were furious, realizing they'd been duped for years. Even the people who used to back her were now distancing themselves, finally seeing how she'd manipulated them. The final nail in the coffin came when a county auditor was brought in to go through the HOA's finances. Turns out, over $30,000 was missing. That was all it took to bring Karen's reign to an abrupt end. The HOA board voted unanimously to kick her out of office, effective immediately. She tried to put up a fight, threatening lawsuits left and right, but no one was paying attention to her anymore. Then, the cops were called. She tried to slip out quietly, but two officers stopped her at the door. As they cuffed her, one of the neighbors couldn't help but cheer. "Well done." And just like that, Karen, the self-proclaimed dictator of the neighborhood, was hauled off like a common criminal. After Karen vanished, the HOA went through a complete overhaul. They relaxed some of the ridiculous rules, canceled all those bogus fines, and made sure that no one would ever have unchecked power over the residents again. The funniest part? A few weeks later, I found out Karen had tried to appeal in court, but it didn't get her anywhere. She ended up selling her house and leaving town. Word is, she moved somewhere far away, where no one knows her, probably setting the stage to build her little empire of control all over again in some other poor neighborhood. But here, peace finally returned. And honestly, it's never been nicer to see a for sale sign on that street. Enjoyed this story? Don't forget to hit subscribe.